Welcome to the Matadoras. We are Dina and Lizzie, and we are so excited that you're here with us today. And we are going to talk about burnout. And most of the time, when we talk about burnout, we're probably going to talk about something to do in the job world. But there might be outside factors that could contribute to that as well. So I think many of us can really, really relate to that type of emotion of burnout and how it affects us emotionally, physically, and all those things. So we figured this was really a great topic to bring into the Matadoras. And we just want you to sit back and enjoy. Gina?
Hello, everybody. Hey, so burnout is a subject that I unfortunately am very well acquainted with. And I'm going to be telling my story about burnout on the job. But I want you to really, those of you who are in situations where your job is fine, it's always been fine, I want you to really think about if you have gone through this, because even if you're not in a toxic job or in an overwhelming job, it could just be that you're experiencing burnout anyway. It's most commonly on the job, but it doesn't have to be. So I want to make sure that you can kind of take what we're presenting and apply it to any situation you might find yourself in. So, burnout. Description of burnout is any kind of chronic stress situation that affects you mentally and physically. The three cornerstones that describe burnout affect you in the fact that you feel exhaustion, cynicism, more than usual, and inefficiency. You are just struggling in every way. You're not nearly as efficient as you used to be. You might be just constantly frustrated and irritated with what is going on in your job or in your life or in your circle. You find yourself complaining all the time. You find yourself irritable, and you just find yourself exhausted. So, some of the symptoms of burnout are these for the job. Again, apply these to your personal life if you feel like these fit. You are dragging yourself to work. Or if it's not your job, you don't want to sleep. You don't want to get up in the morning. You're dragging yourself to whatever you have to do. You are so depressed the day before you go in. So maybe you have the Sunday blues, but it's not just the normal Sunday blues where you just don't really want to go to work. It is intense. You might even feel nauseous because even the thought of going to work is just making you sick, and you're trying to figure out any way to call in, any way to get out of it. You are feeling disconnected. You feel disconnected to your work and the meaning and value of your work. You feel disconnected from your coworkers. You just don't have that same connection that you used to feel. You are disconnected from even the value of your career. And you just don't care. And if you are a type A personality, or if you're that type that is highly responsible, you not caring about your work or about the quality of your work is not who you are. But that is a very prominent symptom of burnout. You just don't care. Another one is you have no patience. You are irritable. Everything just drives you crazy. You have such a low tolerance for anything going on in the workplace or for anything going on at home. Everything just ticks you off. And that's not who you used to be. Maybe you used to be just a really patient, complacent person, and things are driving you crazy. Lastly, you really doubt your skills and abilities. You used to feel very confident. Maybe you've done this job for years, and you used to feel great about what you were doing. Or maybe you had a boss that really told you how wonderful you were and what an asset you were to the company. But nowadays, you just doubt your skills and abilities. You're wondering if you should be there at all, if you even matter, if you picked the wrong career, if you have any value to give to the company. You really are having a lot of doubts. These are all very classic signs of burnout. Now, that's the mental and emotional side. There are physical signs as well. The physical signs can be headaches. They can be bowel or stomach problems. It can be anything from diarrhea, constipation. You can have any kind of physical complaints, like say your blood pressure is high and it's never been high before, or it was controlled and now it's not. You can be shaky. You can be more hungry. You can be in anxiety. And let's say you've never had anxiety before, but suddenly you feel anxious all of the time. You feel like people are watching you. You might feel targeted. You might just feel frustrated or constantly upset, like we talked about a minute ago. And so, what does that lead you to do? Now you're trying to medicate yourself. Let's say you're drinking more than you ever have in your life. You just feel like when you get home, you need a drink. You need something. You need anti-anxiety meds just to go to work. If you never needed that before, and this is all new, these are very common signs of burnout. And it might mean that something in your job or your life or yourself has changed. So if you find yourself in this situation, what do you do? I'm going to help you with that. One of the things that you can do, and the most important, I believe, that you should do, is discover the why. What is going on in your life? If you did not hate this job when you started it, if you did not hate your life 2 years ago, what has changed? Do you have a whole different life now? Are you possibly middle aged and you have aging parents that need more of your time? You have kids in college that need more of your money. You have a situation at work that completely changed. Maybe you were valued and appreciated and there's a new boss. Or maybe there are just things going on that are toxic and frustrating. Or maybe there's a work-life balance issue. Maybe your job is asking so much of you and your home life is busy enough and you just simply can't balance it all. But you've done it. You've done the best you could for maybe many years, maybe even decades. You've balanced it. You've done what they wanted. You made them happy. And now you're just exhausted and you're done. You've held that up for so long and been everything to everybody for so long. And now you just don't know what's wrong with you and you can't do it anymore. So that's the first thing, is really take a look at your life. Look at every area of your life. Look at your kids. Look at your family. Look at yourself. Look at how you feel about yourself. Look at your physical self. Get an evaluation from a physician. Are you in menopause? Are your hormones lacking? Are you just more frustrated and irritated because things are out of balance? Are you just more exhausted because there's something going on with your thyroid? It could be a million things, or it could be a combination of things, but you need to get to the bottom of, why are you feeling this way? Most important. Secondly, really look at your workplace. If you have been at a workplace that has been too demanding for too long, and if that's kind of what you're looking at, you need to really understand, is this worth it for me? Is it that your home life is so demanding now that you can't balance both? Can you do something in your home life? Are you doing way too much for your children? Are they in 3 different sports, all of them, and you're driving them around like crazy after work, and all of your weekends are spent at tournaments on the weekend, and everything in your life is just feeling out of control? Or you're just a pleaser and you're doing way too much for everybody and nothing for yourself? So if those are kinds of things that you can say yes to, then you might have to really look and shelf your priorities. If you decide it's 100% the workplace, the rest of your life is balanced and it's good, then you really need to sit down and talk to your boss. That is, if you have a good, healthy boss. You can sit down with them. You can explain to them what's going on. Maybe they've had you in a position where you're covering 2 positions while they rehire somebody else, and it is kicking your butt. Or maybe they're just being a little negligent and they're just assigning you things that aren't comfortable for you. You need to sit down with your boss and have an honest conversation about how you're feeling. It may be that they will assign somebody or they will hire somebody to help you. A lot of companies will not hire a second person, even if the numbers have gone up exponentially, until their key players are saying, I can't do this anymore. And suddenly they make sure they get someone else in to help. So please have that conversation if you have a good boss. If you don't have a good boss, at least you're going to be aware. I cannot sit down and talk to my boss. I have an awful boss and they're part of the problem. And that's something that you need to like take a note of. So if it isn't your work, if you have a great job and you love your job, yeah, it's busy. Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah, it has the normal, annoying job things. But right now your life is just too crazy. Then you probably need to look at your home life. You probably need to think about, what am I doing? For instance, when my kids were small, I was completely burning out. I wasn't working. Well, I did. I had an at-home business doing daycare, and I had probably 5 or 6 toddlers in my home every single day. And I was just exhausted. But what happened was I would work all day in my home with these toddlers, give them the very best care. And then at the end of the day, my kids were, and I had 4, my kids were in like, 4 or 5 different things. And so every spare moment of my time was making sure that my kids were in football and basketball and ballet and gymnastics and drama. And now, guess what? Church activities the entire weekend, right? Oh, and then the church is asking me to volunteer for the nursery and to be in the big play that's coming up. I had too much on my plate because I thought that's what I was supposed to do as a good mom, as a good person, as a good Christian. I was supposed to be just filling in all the gaps that I saw around me. Well, I was burning out like crazy. And I had to sit down and really prioritize, sit the kids down and say, listen, you guys each get to pick one curricular activity that you love the most. Just for now, that might change later, but you each get to pick one. We can't do 2 or 3 for each of you. I had to quit volunteering for many things, and I had to actually have some rest and some self-care. That was the only thing that brought me out of it. Was it painful? Of course. Don't you want to give your kids the world and every experience? But even your kids can get burned out, and they're not going to realize they're burned out. They're just going to be little bouncing off the wall kids. But you have to take care of yourself as a mom and as a worker and as a person who is doing everything and trying to do it perfectly. You have to cut back. You cannot do it all well. You can't. Other things in your life will be done very poorly. So keep that in mind, okay? All right. So you shuffled your priorities, you talked to your boss, you worked things out. Okay. So what do you do? Let's say you're just in a job and you can do nothing about it. You're a single mom and you can do nothing about that, like Lizzie was. And we'll let Lizzie talk about that in a minute. Let's say there's nothing you can do. Well, then what do you do? First of all, the most important thing is once you identify where your burnout is coming from, you have got to mitigate it. Burnout gets worse. It accumulates over time. So you need tremendous amounts of self-care. If you're at a job and you're completely burned out, you might need to consider taking some time off. Now, some states give you DI, which is disability insurance. They take it out of your paycheck. A lot of people don't even know this. You're paying for disability insurance every single paycheck, and you get up to 12 weeks a year. And it can actually be for things like chronic stress, migraines, bowel problems. Many, 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 many things can qualify as disability. You'd be shocked by that. You can go to your doctor, you can get a written note, and you can take some time off. Also, if you're one of those people that are caring for aging parents, your child is disabled or sickly, your husband's having a hard time, you're having a hard time, you can also take an FMLA. So those are 2 things to go to your HR representative with and ask them if there's disability insurance that you can take that's paid for by the state, or maybe you have your own disability insurance that you pay for through the company. Looking at taking a leave of absence for a time, maybe 8 weeks, maybe 12 weeks, just to get yourself back. That is very, very valuable. It might just take something like that to help you. Or it could take you just simply, if you have PTO, taking some vacation. But please make sure you don't take a vacation where you are just as exhausted. If you are going to Disneyland with 4 children in a minivan in the middle of summer with all the crowds and it's 102 outside and you're fighting everything you can possibly imagine, including the children in the back of the car, you are probably not going to come back rested. Okay. So you need to take a vacation that makes you feel rested and relaxed. And that even means if it's a staycation, if you're sitting at home and you're watching Netflix with some popcorn while your kids are at school, do not feel guilty. It is vitally important that you take care of yourself. Those of you that don't have any time or can't get any time, take mini vacations on the weekend. If you have to go away, stay with your mom for the weekend, and let someone else handle the kids or have your mom handle the kids or whatever you need to do. Take little tiny mini staycations or get a massage or go somewhere and just read a book for a few hours, whatever you need to do. You have to take care of yourself and you have to get out of this constant cycle of giving out more than you have, because that burnout will continue to grow. It is caused by feeling a lack of control. It is caused by conflicts also. It's caused by feeling completely out of balance, like a work-life balance situation. And sometimes it's caused by feeling that you have no support. And I will just tell you, with my burnout situation, I had a boss that was very much causing my burnout, but was not 100% a cause of it. I had everything I just spoke to you. I had everything that I just described. I had an elderly father that broke his hip, and we had to take care of him for several years. I had 4 kids that needed my attention. Some of them were getting married. Some of them were starting to have children. I was going through menopause. I was having probably a mini midlife crisis because I was starting to feel like, what am I doing? Like, I am not enjoying my life anymore. I'm not enjoying this job. It feels like a grind. It feels like the same thing every day. I feel exhausted trying to emit the energy just to do well in my position because it's not fulfilling some invisible desire that has changed in me. And I was also dealing with absolute out of balance work life because, you get 2 weeks off in these corporate positions, especially if you're a manager. You get 2 weeks off a year, plus some holidays here and there. And that is supposed to give you all the time you need with your aging parents that you're realizing you only have so much time with your children that might be having kids and want more time with you. And if you're like me, you already feel some guilt because you didn't spend as much time with them when they were small because you were trying to make ends meet. And you do not want to do that for your grandchildren. Or maybe your kids are out of state like mine are. And going out of state, you can't do that in a couple of days. And I was dealing with all of it. Every single one of those things I mentioned, all of it, including a narcissistic boss. And guess what? The narcissistic boss, if you, God forbid, have one, as soon as you start disengaging and you're exhausted and you're taking more time off trying to just stay afloat and you don't have a lot of interest in your job, but you're probably keeping it up to where it needs to be, they will capitalize on that. They will literally see any weakness in you and they will make sure to jump in on that and make it look like you are failing and make you feel like you are failing, which adds to that incredible amount of stress that you're feeling. And so it's a vicious cycle when you are on burnout and you have a narcissistic boss because you're burned out, and burnout literally causes you to engage less, to be less productive, to be less interested, and to be more irritable. And so you're trying to deal with yourself with all these emotions. And this person swoops in and says, oh, yeah, see, you are not a good fit for this place. Maybe you've been there 10 years, you know the job like the back of your hand. Maybe you just need them to be supportive. Maybe you just need them to understand. And my particular boss is also going through a lot of midlife stuff. I thought she would understand. I thought she'd understand that my dad broke his hip and I had to be there. There was nobody else to take care of him. So I took a few weeks off. Oh no, this was used against me. Everything I did to try to survive and try to stay afloat and try to be the manager that I should be and make sure everything was okay. And believe me, even if I was on a medical leave, I was still checking in with my employees, not supposed to do that. Calling, if I was on vacation, I was on the phone constantly making sure the company was okay, taking care of the company. But she swooped in like a vulture and she made sure that I looked like I was not the right fit for this position. And you know what? I think that was just the final straw for me. I was like, you know, if you give that much of yourself and you skip things that your kids are doing and you don't see your aging parents as much as you should, and you go to all the little after work things that are expected of you and give up your own life, you're not exercising, you're not taking care of yourself, you're not giving yourself any kind of love, you're not really taking care of your health. You're literally declining in front of your face because you're hitting middle age. And that is the time to pay attention to all of those health things. And yet I'm giving it all up for this job. And I leave and I quit. And you know what? I'm replaced like immediately, like I never mattered. So, words to live by, you all. Really take a look at this. All right, Lizzie, think I've said enough. What do you have to contribute here? What do you want to say?
I have so many thoughts that are going through my head. And I think of, like my sister always said, kind of going back to what you just said, people, my sister always says, people are replaceable in the workforce. And I think sometimes we don't understand that. And we think that they cannot survive without us. But the minute that we fall apart, the minute that we have to step out, it doesn't matter. They're going to replace you. And it's just, I think if we can learn to embrace that and have peace with that and really have peace with who we are, I think it really helps the whole transition part of where you need to be. And I think too that this is why it's really important that we really work and focus on our finances. You know, a lot of times we're like, we've got this $600 payment for a car. We're living in the best house we possibly could. And trust me, people, I like nice furniture. I like nice stuff. But if you don't have the money to say, just to have one bad day away and go, you know what, this job isn't for me, you're going to be in bondage to that job, and that bondage to just everything that kind of evolves around that, and your it, which is, we know it affects our health and everything else. So yeah, burnout is very controlling. It's very debilitating. And a lot of times too, if you're in a rotten relationship or you're in a very abusive relationship, you know, it's hard to kind of focus on the finances because, first of all, you may not have any control over finances. So you have different factors. So like Dina said, bottom line is really taking that time to really evaluate why you have that burnout. Look and search for ways, even if it means that you're going to have a short season where you need to step out for a bit and really take time to get some rest and everything else. And Dina's also right. Like I think of, um, you know, going to Disneyland. They say that's the happiest place in the world. And I can't tell you how many times, because I lived in California most of my life. I've lived in 8 other states, but I always came back to California. I was born and raised in Southern California, but I mostly lived up in the Central Valley. And now I live in the southern part where I've never lived before. And I always laugh because every time I go to Disneyland, you go in those lines for the parking. You can look around you and you realize all of these families that are fighting in the car, getting ready to go into the happiest place in the world, right? So it's not necessarily the happiest place in the world. So really think about what is if you only have so many weeks out of the year, what are those things that you really rejuvenate from? And I know we all want something to entertain our kids, but we might be surprised that some of our kids are really, really happy just being in the water, right? Staycations, like Dina said, there's an app called Resort Pass that I use, and I will buy a day at a pool in my area. So Resort Pass is really good. I'm giving little tips and tricks here. Resort Pass is good in Southern California, especially Arizona, Texas, Florida, but also maybe look at some of the areas like the hotels and everything and see if they offer during certain times of the year that you could buy a day at the pool. And that's a nice little staycation. So it's cheaper than actually staying there, but yet you're able to enjoy something, a special day with your family that you may not have normally done. And I can also say I completely understand that when you have burnout and your job is definitely a huge factor, maybe not the job, but just everything involved, I know how it can rob your Sundays. And at the end of the day, the goal is you don't want any of your days robbed because of your job. I work in the education system. I, in the past, have always worked for my summers. But during the school year, I understood how having my Sundays robbed, um, how easy that's to happen because I would think I have papers to grade, I have, other things I need to do to prepare. I have a lot of rough classes, students aren't nice, da 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 da. So I would just kind of survive through the school year and then I'd live during this, summer. Even that's not even a way to live. So you really need to find out what's your true passion? What's your real purpose? Why am I burned out? And some of them are easier to fix than others. And I agree with Dina when she sat down with her children and she talked about one activity. I've heard child psychologists actually say, they only let their child have one activity because your child's involved in these activities, you're involved as well. And I was a single mom. So I did not have a lot of energy to give. And I also understand on Sundays, a lot of times after church, or even sometimes I couldn't make it to church because I didn't have energy, is that I would tell my boys, see that car that's parked in that driveway? It's not going anywhere. If it's an emergency, go next door. So kind of just recapping, Dina, you said a lot of good stuff, and I would have wait a minute, and I could have added a lot. So I kind of added a lot at the end, but
It is. And you know what? I realized because, I burned out on my first manager job after 5 years, but not until the new boss stepped up and, had an agenda to get rid of me. Um, but I noticed that burnout is actually cumulative. So when I left and went to another job, I was still, and there was a space of a few months in between, but it took nothing for me to go right back to that exhausting, irritable, frustrated, I can't do this anymore feeling. And so it is better to avoid burnout and to really do everything you can to self-care than to get there. Because once you get there, it's not like you can just make it go away. They say it's not medical, but I swear it is medical. And I still have medical issues from that, 11 years in management, sitting all the time, working 50, 60 hours a week. My blood pressure got higher. I have sciatica. I have all kinds of hip problems. I have a adrenaline problem. And you just wouldn't think that you would end up with permanent health conditions, but you will. So please, please, please notice the signs early. Like Lizzie said, if you feel like your job, you cannot handle it for another 5 years, do what you got to do now. Either look for another job or start saving money. Like she said, start making an exit plan to get out. Don't wait. You can live on a lot less than you think and take care of yourself.
Absolutely. Yeah, that was really good. Anything else?
Nope. That's it. Just take care of yourselves, ladies. We care about you.
So everyone that's listening to this, go take some self-care, whatever that looks like. Whether it's taking a nice bath, taking a walk in an area by a lake, whatever you can do, say, I'm going to do some self-care. Anyway, well, we thank you so much for stopping by, and please reach out to us on thematadors.com if you have any questions, and we appreciate you. Look for us on all our social media platforms, and we would love to see you. Anyway, thank you and have a wonderful day.